Hey everyone, Radio Mike here, and for a long time, Futurama has been one of my favourite TV shows. While its sister show, The Simpsons, was satirical of the American family and stereotypical American culture, Futurama went in a different direction as a parody of science fiction as a genre. Tackling classic sci-fi tropes like space exploration, time travel, body swaps, and more, Futurama truly was every nerd's favourite show. But aside from being this hilarious and satirical take on science fiction, it also proved at times to be surprisingly touching and sometimes heart-wrenching in its subject matter. With fan favourite episodes like Jurassic Park and Game of Thrones always making people shed a tear, even when they're simply reminded of these moments. But for me, one episode of this show has always stood out amongst the rest. And that episode is called The Luck of the Fryrish. And in this episode, I'm going to explain to you the true genius and the layers and layers of detail that make this episode truly great. So as you probably know, Futurama revolves around this guy, Philip J. Fry, a man in his mid-20s born in the 20th century. And his life really isn't that great, according to him. He's a pizza delivery boy who doesn't make much money, doesn't have many friends, and as of the first episode of the show, his girlfriend has left him for another man. And all of these things naturally lead us to feeling sorry for Fry, especially in the first episode where he remarks that he hates his life and spends New Year's Eve alone. By pure accident and mistake in the first episode, Fry leaves his entire life behind when he time travels to the year 3000 and starts a whole new life. And probably most importantly is that his prevailing belief in this series is that no one back in the 20th century would miss him. No one would care if he was missing, and no one would particularly notice, and his life wouldn't really change that much. Keep that in mind for later. So after spending a few good years in the year 3000 making new friends and work colleagues with his job at Planet Express, Fry has really settled into this new life, but occasionally reflects on his past in the 20th century. And that's where we pick things up in The Luck of the Fryrish. Fry has a string of bad luck and remembers a time in his youth where he discovered a 7-leaf clover. Flashing back to his youth in the 1980s, the episode shows Fry being successful in pretty much all of his endeavours due to the luck that this 7-leaf clover has brought him. However, there's one person in his youth that isn't really happy with that, and that's his older brother, Yancey Fry Jr. The junior part is kind of important here, you'll see why. And this is our first introduction to Fry's brother, and Fry and Yancey do seem like pretty normal brothers. They're a similar age, they argue a bit, they're bitter, and there's some jealousy brewing between them. In fact, Yancey is particularly jealous of his brother Philip Fry because his name is more conventional than Yancey. In fact, in a flashback to being young kids, Yancey Jr. remarks to his father, Yancey Sr., that he would prefer to be named Philip. And to this, Yancey Sr. remarks that all the firstborn sons in the Fry family are named Yancey, and it is a time-honoured tradition of this family. This also becomes a bit more important later. And as Fry's luck and success continues, Yancey's envy grows and grows over time. It kind of leads us, the viewers, to hate Yancey a bit. He comes across as a jealous and envious older brother who hates seeing his younger sibling outshine him. Circling back to 3002, Fry goes on a journey to his childhood home to find the original 7-leaf clover. He believes that if he finds the clover, his luck will come back, but when he finds his child home deep underneath New York City, Fry discovers that the clover is missing from its original hiding place. And this one's kind of important too, because the hiding place is the cover of a vinyl of the soundtrack for the classic 80s film The Breakfast Club. Keep that in mind. Through a bit more investigation, Fry realizes something really terrible happened after he time traveled to the year 3000. And that is the fact that when he left, his brother capitalized on his disappearance, stole his identity, and lived out the rest of the days with the 7-leaf clover, becoming one of the most successful astronauts of all time, being the first man to land on Mars and being dubbed by many as the original Martian. And naturally, Fry and the viewer are furious that Yancey has taken advantage of his disappearance in that way, and you really couldn't hate Yancey more for this. You want Fry to get justice. But it's the final act and some of the final scenes in this episode that really subverts all of your expectations. Fry, Bender, and Leela go to the cemetery where Philip J. Fry, Fry's older brother Yancey, was buried, in order to find his grave, dig it up, and make things right by stealing the 7-leaf clover. And it's these next few moments in the cemetery that really catch you by surprise and offer quite an emotional and totally unexpected twist. When they find Philip J. Fry's grave, it reads, "Here lies Philip J. Fry, the original Martian. His entire identity has been stolen by his jealous older brother." Or was it? In this moment, Fry realizes that some of the inscription of the gravestone is covered by some shrubbage, and as he begins to clear it away, we flash back to one final moment of the past. And this leads to the episode's grand reveal. We flash back to a now married Yancey Fry consulting with his wife about the name of their firstborn son. Yancey explains that he's been thinking of a name and says, "I'm naming you Philip J. Fry after my little brother, who I miss every day," before proclaiming that he'll always love and miss our Philip J. Fry. And this is one of the most emotionally impacting moments from a cartoon that I've ever seen. The viewer's entire perception of the reality of this situation is flipped upside down. Not only do we find out that Yancey didn't in fact steal Fry's identity, but instead named his firstborn son Philip, not Yancey, breaking a long-time tradition of the Fry family, is simply unexpectedly heartwarming. Furthermore, that Philip J. Fry went on to live in our Philip J. Fry's spirit by becoming an astronaut and achieving Fry's childhood dream. But it's not over yet. Immediately, we flash back to 3002, and at the same time as Fry, the viewer learns the final line on the gravestone's inscription. It reads, "Here lies Philip J. Fry, named for his uncle to carry on his spirit." And what's really beautiful about this moment is going back to the context of the first episode of Futurama, where Fry didn't believe that anyone would miss him if he was gone. And that's a terrible, terrible thought for a young man to be having. And that's what caused this immediate response to believe that his brother was responsible for stealing his identity, when in fact it was the complete opposite, and Yancey really did everything he could to honour Fry, including breaking a long-standing family tradition. I think it's really beautiful, but there's one more moment that really puts the icing in the cake and brings things full circle here. Remember how I said that Fry hid the 7-leaf clover in the soundtrack to The Breakfast Club? Well, as Fry realizes these things alongside the viewer, he holds up the clover and begins to cry. And in this moment, a sad song starts to play. And it's not just a sad song from the original soundtrack of Futurama. It's not just incidental score music, no. As Fry places the clover, tears in his eyes, back into the grave of his nephew, the song "Don't You Forget About Me" by Simple Minds starts playing. And that song is a song that is commonly regarded as the defining song from the soundtrack of which 80s film? The Breakfast Club. Every single part of this episode is totally thought out full circle. It is amongst some of the greatest writing in fiction I've ever witnessed. And looking back at that episode when Fry originally hides the clover in the Breakfast Club soundtrack, he says to himself as a young teenager, "I can't wait till I'm old enough to feel ways about stuff." And it's in this moment in 3002 where Fry truly becomes an adult. He realizes his mistakes, he misses his brother, he misses his past, and he's honored by what's happened. He places the clover back, and the camera zooms out of the cemetery to the tune of Simple Minds' "Don't You Forget About Me." And that is the true genius of Futurama's The Luck of the Fryrish. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Radio Mike. I do a lot of videos on pop culture like this. Let me know if you'd want me to do another one of these for another episode of anything. subscribe to my channel, check out my other videos, thumbs up, comment, etc, etc. Catch you later.
I hold you close the moment last I touch your skin, but I went to run my hand through your hair and I noticed you were attached to string. You were a puppet this whole time, you were attached to string. You were a puppet this whole time.